Hello and welcome to the Caregivers podcast, where we discuss all things dementia, including sharing caregivers' stories. My name is Kimberly Scott, and in 2013, my mom was diagnosed with dementia at the young age of 65. And after many years of feeling overwhelmed, I am just now getting comfortable with saying how overwhelming it was, or it is. According to Google, 2/3 of women are caregivers, and there are millions of caregivers out there that go unpaid. So after learning of those stats, I wanted to start this podcast to build awareness and to educate those who don't know about dementia and get people talking about having that tough conversation about the what if you live, having that conversation with your loved ones, and maybe, just maybe, breaking that dementia cycle. If you want to share your story, knowledge, and or be a guest on Caregivers Stories podcast, visit ThatKimberly.com to sign up to be interviewed. And while you're there, you can also choose what platform you prefer to listen to, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and now Amazon Alexa. So now that I got that all out of the way, I'd like to introduce today's guest, Mrs. Sue Paul. Hi, Sue.
Hey, Kim, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I love podcasts. I'm sort of I'm an addict myself to listening to them, so this is fun.
Great. So tell listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an occupational therapist, and I have been doing work with older adults most of my career, which is, I think, in its 28th year.
Wow.
I know. I can't believe it's been that long. So I'm also a certified health coach. I dabble in fitness and personal training. I'm a writer as a hobby and a passion. I'm an advocate for the Alzheimer's Association. I started a nonprofit and run that. Yeah, so I do a lot of things. It's generally all related to older adults and aging well, and trying to have discussions like this about problems that are very hard to solve because there's plenty of them to go around. But I've just kind of, formed my roots in this arena, chronic disease management, and kind of how it all relates to our society and our treatment of older people, and, that we're all going to be older someday. How do we make that a smoother transition for all of us? So yeah, it's a lot. I do a lot. Kind of scattered, but
well,
yeah.
Hey, that gives you a lot of expertise in many different topics and or as it relates to seniors and all things dementia is like what I like to say.
Yep.
So you would be a great person to ask them, why is it then when people speak of the word dementia, they automatically assume Alzheimer's or associate Alzheimer's?
They didn't used to. People were called senile. When we were growing up, grandma was a little cuckoo, she had some senility, and then Alzheimer's as a diagnosis came around maybe in the 80s and 90s. And there was a big push to actually give people a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease because that made it a legitimate diagnosis, something. So now the trend seems to be like, oh, we're calling everything Alzheimer's. But in reality, Alzheimer's is just the largest type of dementia. You can have dementia for 100 different reasons. Yeah. Some of them are reversible, some are not. You could have dementia due to Parkinson's and dementia due to Lewy body. Yeah. You could have dementia due to vascular problems, to alcoholism. I mean, you can have a lot of different causes. It's just that Alzheimer's is the biggest one right now. So.
And you said some dementias are reversible?
Yeah. Sometimes you know someone, an older person, who kind of just starts slipping mentally, or they suddenly get confused and disoriented. And, that's a form of dementia. Their mental function has decreased. You come to find out, oh, they have a urinary tract infection. And with some antibiotics, their mental function improves.
Okay.
I see that a lot with isolated seniors who are just so poorly nourished or dehydrated. They're just not as mentally sharp as they should be because they're not getting the right nutrition or fluid. So you fix that problem and you've restored their cognitive abilities. So that's a reversible type of dementia.
Okay, got it. That makes way more sense to me that people put those two automatically together. So I know offline you shared with me that it wasn't just very long ago that having the diagnosis of dementia was covered by insurance, or the medications were covered by insurance. I believe you had said something about back in 2001 or in the 2000s.
Oh, so, okay. It wasn't medications, but in the therapy world, physical, occupational, and speech therapists could not see somebody with a diagnosis of dementia because it meant that they couldn't get better. And Medicare wouldn't approve any claim if someone had a diagnosis of dementia because they thought, well, this is an irreversible problem and you guys can't fix it. So there's no point in paying rehabilitation services, So that was in my early career. So I started as an OT in the early 90s. And, I was in these really poorly funded nursing homes all over the country, actually. And, those people just sat and they were tied down and medicated, and we did not work with them. Even if they broke their hip, even if they had a stroke, even if they had, wounds and things like that, they couldn't be seen under Medicare. So Medicare overturned that in 2001. And suddenly the floodgates opened because then the family members would say, can you work with my mom? And it'd be like, well, yeah, I can now because Medicare will pay the claim, except I just don't know how. Like she can't follow my instructions. How am I going to do this? So that was the paradigm shift for me, having been a really terrible OT for 10 years, not helping the people that needed it most.
Yeah. Wait a minute. You just said terrible. You weren't terrible.
Yeah, I was terrible. I was terrible. Because I was just part of that culture of, those nursing homes were so depressing. And I don't know if you were a kid and you were in those hallways and they smelled like urine and the people were moaning and tied down. And, I was part of that. I mean, I didn't know how to fix it. I wasn't expected to fix it, but it was just heartbreaking all the same. So it wasn't, it's right around the year 2000 where I'm like, you know what? I've been doing this for 10 years and this population needs me. This is ridiculous. Like they need a lot of help. They need supplies. They need positioning devices. I can teach them how to feed themselves better. I can teach them how to, engage with the environment better. They have potential here. This is so sad. So that's when I kind of turned my whole thinking on its head. I'm like, all right, what can I do to improve these people's lives, whether they understand my instructions or not? I can work around that. Like I just need to kind of figure it out. And so that's what I've spent the last 20 years is really honing my craft as far as finding ways to improve the lives of people with dementia and their caregivers.
Well, what would you say as it relates to the caregiver has been the biggest shift?
Yeah, yes, for sure. Because first of all, there's more people living with dementia and Alzheimer's. And then the responsibility falls on the caregiver, the family member, willing or not. Maybe the assumption is the spouse signed up for this when you took your vows, for better, for worse, for sickness and health. But, the adult son who lives in a different state, who suddenly has all the responsibility of caring for a demented parent, they didn't sign up for that. They weren't expecting that. That happens all the time. So these caregivers are so strapped. I mean, they're trying to work. They have their own families. They have their own bills to pay. They don't have a ton of time to sit and figure this out or to, handle all of the complications that come along with the journey, because it doesn't get easier. Unfortunately, it only gets harder.
Yeah.
So, and more heartbreaking along the way too. So so shout out to caregivers. It's a heroic job that you do for very little accolades or, any kind of compensation. It's just a big, big job.
What do you think would be, in your opinion, the best resource or the first thing that a caregiver should think about when they get put into that position, when their loved one is diagnosed and they have to basically step up and
this is more of a textbook that I have to write, because there's no predictable path. I mean, it generally starts with their physician. That's where they go in, and most times they're very discouraged by that visit because the physician doesn't know what to do either, honestly.
I was very discouraged.
They don't have the answer, and they don't have time to help you with more of your functional problems you're having. If there's a medicine for it, they can do that, but there's not a lot of medicine for it. So they just kind of sit there and they sympathize for you, but there's not a lot of direction. So then your next step is the Alzheimer's Association, which is a fantastic organization, and they're working hard to put more legislation into place that will empower physicians, because they are the front line, to counsel more, to care plan kind of what to do next. So doctors in the future will be more informed of how to lead them.
Well, that's good to know.
That's coming. It's coming. So, gosh, there's so many things, but it just kind of depends what's going on. Do you have to make this home safer? Do they need more supervision? Do you try to simplify the clutter or the hazards around their home? Do you take over the bills? Do you manage their medications? You kind of have to figure that out. If you want to get a good therapist in your life, there are plenty of physical and occupational therapists who can kind of guide what around the home, how to make that safer, and where to target your energy, because it can be consuming, as you know. It can be completely overwhelming. But so then maybe your next choice is to find a good therapist that can come to the home and help you figure that out.
Does Medicaid, do they have resources? Is it Medicaid or Medicare? Which one?
Medicare generally will pay for, they'll pay for a therapy visitor too. It kind of just depends on what's going on. Generally, these people have another diagnosis going along with it. They have arthritis, and maybe they've had some falls. Maybe they've had, so there's other complicating things that warrant therapy. A lot of times it doesn't have to just be for dementia. So it all kind of gets lumped in the same bag. But so Medicare will pay for it. If they're homebound, Medicare Part A can pay 100% of it. And if they are not homebound, meaning they can get out to appointments and things like that, then an outpatient benefit, which is their Medicare Part B, will pay 80%. So that's definitely a path I would go down.
Definitely get help. Definitely don't be discouraged in having the conversation with more than just the physician, is what I'm hearing.
No, you have to seek your mentors. You can go to the support groups where people are already in the trenches and kind of know what works for them. That's super helpful. There's online forums and Facebook groups, and I think there's a lot of support to be found there.
Yeah, lots of Facebook forums and groups and communities. Sometimes so many that it's very overwhelming and sad, because sometimes I feel like from just looking at those, the people in there are not necessarily getting out to find other resources, or maybe they are. That's just the place that they go to vent, and so that's all you see. But at the same time, I have to turn off the notifications sometimes.
That's indicative of the cries for help out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because people just don't know what they don't know, and they're kind of going at it blind and doing this because their mother, their father, their husband, wife, whoever, they're stepping up and doing the right thing. So it does become very overwhelming when going through all that. So tell me a little bit about the direction and why SeniorScapes.
Oh, okay. That's a fun one. So, I've been doing this for so long, as I've said, mostly in the home. So I've been to literally thousands of people's homes, and, working on lots of chronic problems, but, dementia is always the big one. Something I've always said to myself is, if I won the lottery, or if I had a big bag of money, I would have a place for people to, with and without dementia, older folks, to be able to go that was free and accessible, and they could exercise, they could be social, they could
be safe.
Yes. There's just a place, because so many of these people are just literally stuck in their homes, So I was at a patient's home, and this is a great story. So the daughter was about my age, and she had two sons, probably middle school age. And she had two parents that she lived with, and her father had early stage Alzheimer's disease, meaning his memory was mostly impaired, and he had terrible insight into his own deficits, meaning he had no clue that he was impaired at all. He thought he was fine.
Oh, wow.
But he made really, really poor choices. So like he would, just kind of dismantle the lawnmower in the middle of winter, and he'd frequently take the car out, which he wasn't really supposed to be driving, but he didn't think anything was wrong with him.
Yeah.
So she had that to deal with him. And then she also had her mother, who was in the middle stages. And the mother in the middle stages was wandering, wringing her hands, trying to find something to do, because she knew that she should be doing something. So she would open up all the cabinets and pull out all the food. And she'd be trying to, in her routine, she would be making a meal, but it was just a disaster, because she would just not know really what she was doing. So she would make a mess. She would also wander out the door and leave. And so the father, who was supposed to be supervising the mother, but he had such poor memory, he didn't keep up with her. And so when the daughter would come home from work, she literally never knew what she was going to come home to. So sometimes the mother was missing, sometimes the father was missing, and the car was missing, or they were both missing, and the house was a mess, and the doors were wide open, and it was so stressful. So eventually when she picked up the boys and she came home from work, she locked all of them in the home. So 5 of them just got locked in the house from about 5 p.m. until the next day. And on weekends too, locked in. So the boys couldn't play sports, and the boys couldn't go to their friends' houses, because she couldn't leave the parents.
Yeah.
So I was just heartbroken for this situation. I'm like, why is there not a place for you guys to go? This is this is ridiculous. They couldn't go to the mall, they couldn't go to the movies, they couldn't go to a restaurant, they could not really, they had no place to go. So I left their home one day feeling kind of
Sad.
kind of sad and discouraged,
Yeah.
and I drove past the park, a public park, and there is an area where these little small children were playing on the playground, and all the moms were hanging out on the benches and
Ah,
talking and socializing and hanging out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why is there not a public park for older adults? Like specifically geared toward them, for the whole family, even not necessarily just for dementia, but inclusive of dementia. Like, how do we make it safe for those people too?
yeah.
So that started me down a path. I live in Maryland. I walked into the city of Frederick to the mayor's office and I said, hey, I want to build a park for seniors. And he said, oh, that's a pretty good idea. Let's do, it sounds like a good idea. I'm like, all right. So I thought it would take two weeks maybe. We'd put up a fence and put some stuff in there, and I'll bring my shovel. My husband will help. I thought it really was that simple. And now we're looking, like, honestly, May is 5 years that I've been working this. So I've learned a lot along the way. I had to form a nonprofit to legitimize the cause, which is to build accessible public parks that are senior centric and dementia friendly for older adults. So it's called SeniorScapes. It's a 501c3. We've been in existence for about 2 years now. And the first park, which is already kind of designed and ready to plop in the ground, should happen next year. We're just waiting on a few formalities with the city of Frederick to pass an MOU, an agreement between the nonprofit and the city of who's going to do what. So hopefully that gets approved next month and we are rolling. But what I have to bring to the table is a lot of money. I have to finance a lot of it because it's not budgeted yet. If this was a children's playground, okay, we'll throw another $100,000 in the budget and we'll build that out in a year. But because it's a new thing, or who knows what the stigma is about it. Everybody's excited about it. It's such a no-brainer idea. So you can go to the website to see a few pictures or follow us on Facebook at seniorscapes.org. But in general, so the park is, it can be any size from like maybe a quarter acre to a full acre if you wanted to have it really awesome.
Yeah.
But there's fitness equipment. And so the whole area is fenced in for the wander prone, to keep everybody kind of contained. And there's only one entrance and exit, so that if a caregiver wants to hang out, there's a pavilion right by the entrance and exit. So they can just kind of relax knowing that they're not going to wander off, and they can kind of guard the entrance and exit. So when you first come in, there's fitness equipment right off the bat. And, they're for older adults who just want to come in and work out and leave, which is great. There's a walking path around the whole thing. There's activities to work on.
That's activity.
Walking is huge. Yeah. Cardiovascular health. There's stations for balance, which is a huge thing that people need to keep going.
Yeah.
There's kind of physical challenges, but everything's modified so it's safe. So like there's a fake stream that runs through it. If you see pictures of it, the stream is painted. And the idea is to like give the perception of a risk without there actually being a risk. So there's 4 different ways to cross the stream. You can cross over a balance beam. You can cross with stepping stones that kind of alternates your gait pattern. You can go over a ramp bridge or a step bridge, or you can just walk flat across it because it's completely flush. So those 4 mobility challenges are things they might run into in real life. Going to get to practice those skills like ramps and steps, and tandem walking is what it's called, with one foot in front of the other, and kind of figuring out motor planning, where to put your feet, because these are neurodegenerative symptoms of diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and actually just decline in general for people who as they age.
Bad
so
balance,
anyway, so they can work on all those things. And then as you go deeper into the park, there's sensory and cognitive challenges kind of for brain health. So there's a music station, there's a clock game to practice telling time. And, you'd be surprised how hard that is actually.
To tell time?
Reading an analog clock. And forget it, our kids are not going to know how to use an analog clock. Like they only know how to read a digital clock. But for, the boomers now, to match the digital time to an analog time is kind of takes some mental flexibility. You'd be surprised. There's a memory game. So if you come up on a sign and on this sign are 4 shapes, you got to remember those 4 shapes, because 20 feet down the path, there's only 3 shapes, and which one's missing? And the next 20 feet, there's only 2 shapes, which one's missing? So it's memory games built in. There's a scavenger hunt, which is great for visual scanning of the environment, which is another thing that people tend to lose as they age, the ability to do that. So like if I was in a restaurant and I can't scan the environment to find the restroom or find the exit, because you just kind of lose the perception of attention to things that are far away. Anyway, it's just to practice these kind of things. So it's got a lot of science built into it. It's got a lot of just good old fashioned get outside and be in nature and all the special ever changing elements that nature can bring.
Yeah. That we need.
It's
Yeah. That's
that we need.
healthy.
It's
Yeah. That our body
yes,
needs
socialization. There's all this research that shows that, in having a public park a certain distance from your home, that you're more likely to live, live longer, live better, all these indicators of better quality of life. It's just having access to the
to.
outdoors. You can have a birthday party there with your whole family.
Yeah.
The nursing home can bring over a bunch of people and let them hang out and do stuff.
Mhm.
Even if you're in a wheelchair, there's a place you could work on standing. Because how many facilities do you go to? If you're in a wheelchair, sorry, you're staying in your wheelchair. You're not going to
Yeah.
be able to stand up. Nobody gives you that opportunity. Let's just
Mhm.
stand for the sake of standing. No, go from
Yeah.
this chair to this chair, and that's all you get. So anyway, I could go on and on about SeniorScapes. It's my passion.
It
Um,
sounds like it, and
yeah, I
it's
know.
a
I'm
great
sorry.
one though.
Pretty
No, I
babbly
mean,
about it.
it's something that you made a statement about that if it had been a park for kids, that they could put an extra 100,000 whatever in the budget, but for this, because it's new, well, it's not going to be new. We're living longer. There's
Yeah.
more. The baby boomers are here. They're in effect, and it's just something that more and more people are becoming caregivers because more and more people are getting some form of dementia, and it's not going away. So
And if you think about, like, and I love kids, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to beat up on the kids,
yeah,
and I want
yeah,
them to have their stuff. But in the public park systems as it is, you have specialty features based on the user. So you have children's parks, and they're sometimes split into like the little toddlers and the older kids. You
yeah.
have parks dedicated to sports and all the different kinds of athletes. So there's basketball and baseball and soccer, and lots of different features for them. There's, and if you want to say, well, there are pavilions for families. Well, how accessible are they? Because if I have to walk a half a mile to get to that pavilion from my car,
Yeah,
that's not really conducive for a senior.
yeah,
And even the dogs have their own space,
yeah,
like as if they're tax-paying citizens. They're really not.
yeah.
but
And I love
but
animals, but
I
yeah,
do
there
too.
needs
I
to be,
love
yeah,
dogs, and I think the dog parks are great, and I think people, that's what they want. That's great. But here's the largest tax-paying demographic that just needs. It's not even an expensive fix. It's just thinking about it differently. Like, why is there not amenities for them?
yeah,
Like from the fitness aspect, like you have those parks that have, the courses where you run along the path, and there's a
yeah.
push-up
That nobody
station. You
uses
run a little further.
anymore
Yeah,
except for
which nobody uses.
CrossFit.
And yeah, so you have to really be able to go a full mile to complete all of those
Tasks,
stations,
yeah,
right? And now they've started clumping them together, which is fine too. But is there shade over those, or how far is it to get to them? And is the equipment really appropriate for an older adult? So it's those sort of considerations that my eyes just got opened up to. And the more I thought about it, the more problems with the whole system I kept finding. I'm like, okay, wait, we have to fix this. 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 So
well, yeah, because if we
yeah,
don't fix it now, starting with SeniorScapes, and I'm sure there's, whatever it is, as it relates to the boomers and our seniors, then we don't fix it now, then when are we going to fix it? Like, it's not going away, and
right.
we're only living longer. And that's definitely, like, my eyes got opened to this factor of the caregivers going unpaid, and all the things that happen to caregivers when they take on a loved one that didn't plan to either one be around that long or plan for any kind of care because they can't care for themselves anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's very heartbreaking. So I get your passion. I hear it. I love it. I think it's awesome. The education process is building awareness is huge, and I'm on your side, so
Oh, thanks,
anything,
Kim.
yeah, so anything that I can do to help you with that, I will say it again, as we record, that it's a passion that anything I can do to help, I believe in that. I feel like if we could start having these conversations now instead of later on every level, that will
Yeah,
all
there is
be
no
better off.
later. I mean, we're here.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
love that expression. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Well, okay, we're here. We're at the bridge.
yeah,
So it's time to cross it, except the bridge isn't built. So
yeah.
we gotta build it now.
In your
So
experience, why do you think it's so taboo for people to be able to have that conversation? Why is the conversation so tough to say, hey, what happens if you can no longer take care of yourself and you live, past the expected age? Or not even, what if you have a heart attack and get dementia? Why do you think it's so tough for people to have that conversation about what they want done and what plan they have in place if they have one?
yeah, well, it's scary, first of all. And plus they'd rather defer to their spouse. Well, they'll know what to do, or they'll take care of me, or My daughter, she'll step up. It's really funny. As everybody's living longer, just because the lifespan is increasing doesn't mean the well span is. So people are just living longer with more disease.
Mm-hmm.
We can keep people alive a long time.
Yeah.
So that's what people don't plan for. They don't think, well, yeah, I might live to be 100 and 20 of those years are going to be terrible. Like, they don't think that way. They think just the last year I'll die, I'll probably start, you know what I mean? They think death happens either in their sleep or they get something quickly and it goes, but they live with chronic conditions and pain and inconvenience for years.
Yes.
And that is a hard thing to plan for. So if I can just put on my health coaching hat for a minute, because I know how the lifespan goes at this point and all the things you can get stuck with in your later years, that you've got to start in your 40s and 50s planning your well span. Like, how do I keep diabetes at bay? How do I keep the weight off? How do I keep my bones healthy and my joints healthy? And, how do I break all those bad habits now? Because that's why, it's not like you want to lose a few pounds so you look good in the summer. You want to keep the weight off so that your joints aren't falling apart when you're 75, because it's a long lifespan. It's a long time to live disabled and you don't want that.
Yeah.
So that's the conversations I would have. Like, that's my soapbox these days, is just more early intervention. Midlife people have got to get it together. And, you're taking care of your parents now. If you don't want that to be your future, then you have to address it now.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, ever since I went through this with my mom, going now on 7 years, I definitely am quick to ask, my friends, anybody who wants to talk to me about what I did and how and why and everything as it relates to dementia with my mom. I tell them at the end of our conversation, do you have a plan? Do you know what you want done? If you live longer, like, what's your plan? Well, I have a will. No, it's not about, if you die, it's about if you live.
If you live, that is absolutely true. Yep. Yeah. You can have a plan for dying, but nobody has a plan for living. So it's like, you've got to figure that out.
Early intervention for sure, like keeping things at bay, and just like you said, to stay in a reasonable, healthy life where you're not in pain and you're not, for lack of better words, and it's the only word I can think of, a burden to your children or someone,
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
That's the first thing everybody says. I don't want to be a burden to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. That when they say that to me, I'm like, well, you're going to be, like, my dad makes a joke about just putting them out to pasture and putting a bullet in them. I'm like,
yeah,
Dad,
exactly. That's what they think is that's funny.
Yeah. Not funny, and it's not going to happen. So come on, let's have this conversation, which he's gotten a lot better, but I feel like it's a generational thing that they think, oh, just put me out to pasture. And
because it doesn't go that way anymore.
Yeah, absolutely not. So I'm glad we're on the same page. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. How can folks get a hold of you if they want to learn more about SeniorScapes and maybe possibly donate to your cause?
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So the website is seniorscapes.org.
Okay.
We also have a Facebook page, SeniorScapes Inc. Yes,
Okay.
INC. Yeah, my website is Sue M. Paul or thedementiaqueen.com.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook too. So I have a Facebook page, Sue M. Paul. And then I also have me, Sue Paul. I'm a chatterbox on Facebook. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So hit me up there for sure.
Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate it. And I will definitely be sending people your way. I look forward to the groundbreaking ribbon cutting.
I'll invite you for sure.
Yes, please do. I look forward to that. So
sounds good.
Thank you again, Sue. And thank you to the listeners. First, I always like to say, until next week, remember, sharing is caring. And to the caregivers listening, in the words of Dottie Gandy, you have my undying love, gratitude, and admiration. And to those that have not had that conversation with their family about dementia, please start talking about the what if. Remember, tomorrow is promised to no one. If you want to listen to other episodes, go to ThatKimberly.com to choose where you want to listen to them, whether it's iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and now Amazon Alexa. And you can always connect with me as well on Facebook, Insta, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thanks again. Bye, Sue.
Bye. Thanks, Kim.